If joining the corner of boxes, like this butt joint with plywood and pine, or these two plywood surfaces, you can just glue and screw them, or you can put a nail in the side to increase the strength. You'd use a tenon saw to cut the material, or possibly a Hegner saw if you had an electric version. And then you'd use a pin hammer and some pins and some PVA glue to join it together. A more complex joint, which would take longer, might be to use a finger joints. Finger joints interlock like this, so need a reasonable amount of accuracy. But again, you would use a tenon saw or a Hegner saw to cut these out. Joining perspex is slightly different. We can machine, like you can see here, using the laser cutter, some finger joints that would fit together, but they would still need glue to glue them together. Or you just lap joint by literally just putting glue on here and gluing the two items together. Plastic needs to be glued with a special solvent called Tensol. Tensol is really quite smelly and dangerous in terms of the fumes, but it actually eats into the plastic and bonds the two bits together. So Tensol is the universal glue for gluing plastic items together. Quite tricky to use, but applied by machine, quite quick. Some of you may not have joints. You may have quite decorative boxes that need to be made as a complete unit, like this ladybird. This ladybird's been vacuum formed on this mould, so all the detail has to be put in first. A typical vacuum forming has sloped sides to allow the product to release, has a machine that will heat the plastic when the plastic is held in the grid at the bottom, and then the machine itself has controls to suck the air out in order to be able to form the shape. Once the shape is formed, it can then be cut off and used as a box, but notice the sides are always slightly sloped and tapered. There are other ways of cleverly attaching that you might need to think of. So things like these letters are actually held on with magnets, and there are little magnets buried inside both the wood and the plastic that allow the items to take hold. All these processes must then be put into your manufacturing specification. The process needs to be explained, a little bit like I've done on this video. You need to suggest a time that's needed or how long it might take, perhaps in relation to using a simpler or a more complex form. You need to include the tools, and you also need to explain why this process is the best choice for your product. You'll also need to think about the finish that you're going to put onto your product. If you don't put any finish on wood at all, it gets dirty marks like this. But a varnished finish will give a nice smooth surface and will seal it and will make it look a bit nicer. Plastic needs very little finishing, sometimes just wiping down. However, vacuum forming will need the parts cutting out from the sprue, and sometimes, as you can see, there are many different parts in one particular casting. So that will take a little bit longer. You need to have ideally at least 2 manufacturing specifications with full reasons, but ideally if you're looking for grade 5 and above, you need to have 4.